Hello, Oak and Earth Nation. I'm looking at Amanda, who you're going to see in just a second. But I'm standing here in the middle of what is now famous to us as the Bee Tree on Fair Oaks Ranch in Adelaida. And this tree, which you can see a little bit of behind me, is a valley oak that lived for at least 200 years. We'll take a little tour of her in another moment. You can see some of the size of the branches behind me. And so after that many hundreds of years, and of course her name, the bee tree, came from the beehive that had lived inside of her trunk for decades. It was several generations of bees that lived inside. Last March, at the end of the month in 2022, she laid herself down on the ground, returning herself to the soil, completely exploded from the inside out. And so all these branches that are here are really the canopy of her enormity that are laying on the soil. And we had a really dry summer last year, and pretty hot for extended periods of time. So she fell down with all of her leaves intact and many acorns, and that is all dried now. But the lichens are moist again because here in this area, just a little over a week ago, we had the now infamous atmospheric river come through, open up, and dump over 10 inches of rain in most parts, and especially here in Adelaida, we experienced a lot of rainfall, which is customary in certain flood stages that can happen. The average here was over 20 inches a year for that's the average. So I'm sorry, the yearly average was 20 inches. And so in a high year, we would have had more than 20. And in a low year, we could get maybe 8. In some of those drought years, we only received about 8 or so. And so after all that dryness, now the water has returned and we have moisture and we have lichen and we have mosses. And so I am here with Amanda of the Activated Earth. Here she is.
Hi.
And here's more of the bee trees. We'll scan around. And Amanda and I want to talk a little bit more about what happens when a tree like this falls to the ground. And you can see that the bee tree, doesn't have like a lot of other oaks out there. See in the distance, there's the oak woodland, the line of the woodland, and then the hill is a little bit more bare. And these trees that you see right here, these are walnuts. And this is a walnut orchard in the valley that goes up through here. So the bee tree was a sentinel, an antenna tree, and she's now laid herself down to create more oak trees. So what happens, Amanda, when a large tree like this lays herself down on the ground from the soil level?
Well, I love it that you pointed out that she's kind of hanging out here by herself. She doesn't have neighbors. If she had had neighbors, what she would be doing would be freeing the canopy for the young ones, and it would have been the appropriate time for the young ones because oak trees, as you know, need canopy as they grow. If they don't have to reach for the sun, then they grow really fast and they don't create their heartwood layer that keeps them from falling over actually. And so they grow out more than they grow up when they're shaded. And so that would be one thing that she would be like making space for the teenagers. And what she is doing that all trees do when they fall over like this is she's feeding the soil. And you can take a look and see like what's already happening. You can see that down here, like she's already, like, parts of her returning to the earth. It's all going to break down and put organic matter back into the ground. And that is really, really important because lots of times what we do when a tree falls down, we think we're supposed to cut it up and haul it off. But when we don't, we're providing all this extra carbon for the ground, which the other plants that are going to be here will need. She also becomes host to mushrooms, and she becomes host to all of these insects that flourish in this kind of environment. And those insects need a place to be. I mean, they're part of a diverse ecosystem. And when you have those things, then you have what you need as far as things to take care of pests. So those insects will attract birds. The birds will eat them, and those birds will go on to create other opportunities to eat bad insects. So and then you'll get the higher up species of birds. You'll get birds that eat birds. That's what you get with different types of little hawks. And you just start to create this environment that knows how to take care of itself. And the mushrooms and the bugs are going to be in the ground, creating pore space and room for the water to infiltrate. That's going to happen if you take the trees off the hillside. So I think you showed that one that's already down over there, that's kind of on the hillside. If you don't let the things go back to the earth in that way, then you are affecting the porosity of the soil. It can die. There's nothing growing in the soil and on the soil. Then you don't have appropriate microbiology. You don't have appropriate fungal populations. There are all kinds of things that this tree is contributing to. And even though she's not a home for bees anymore, what she is now becoming in her new life is a home for insects and mushrooms. And that's exciting.
Yay! Yay! That's so exciting. And I'm going to point out one last thing as we're talking about the birds, because you might see in the trunk and the large branches here that she was an acorn, a granary tree. And she still is, serving that very important purpose of being a place for acorns to store their food.
I'm going to take one out. They don't want to come out. They're in there good.
Yeah, and the woodpeckers are really, really good at their job. So this was a granary tree for a really long time, and remains to be so. The acorns may be able, the woodpeckers may be able to come back and retrieve some of the things that they put in here. And those acorns become little refrigerators full of the insects that the birds like to eat. But just look at the skill. These woodpeckers have gone to a lot of work over a very long period of time to store this tree full of acorns. And I think that's always pretty. I like looking at that and knowing all the hard work that went into it. And that does not contribute at all to the tree's demise. I think there's sometimes the idea granary tree is one that has become weak, and that's not always the case. You'll see that not every large giant oak is a granary tree, and a lot of activity may mean that there is some drier wood that the critters use because it's easier to access, but it doesn't always mean that the tree is going to be weaker. And we don't really know all of the reasons that the bee tree fell, because there wasn't a large amount of rot. She did have some. There's a trunk over there, and how enormous it was. It all just shattered. So there was a need, and it was time. And the bees left. The bees went, and they actually flew into not that oak, but the one right over there. I can't really get much of the camera. The beehive reestablished itself down there. And maybe in another video, we'll go take a look at that. All right. We'll come back with more and see you soon.